Well, hello everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this very cold Sunday. Boy, what a change from yesterday. Took the day off yesterday a bit. Had a few things to do. Finally, almost over the borderline cold and sore throat that I had. Been drinking hot tea, so everything's coming along. Head's clearer. I figured I'd do a live stream earlier today, if only because of the fact that, I'm a New York Giants fan, but since they're obviously not playing, I my second team that I always root for is the New Orleans Saints because they were my second home when I lived in New Orleans many years ago. So I've always rooted for them along the way. So I always have that fallback. Tint rolled up, Cynthia Gwynn Yaudis. Thank you. I feel better. Thank you. Danielle Dean, Danilo, Yakubov, Javon Johnson, hoping for snow in inland South Carolina. Timothy Parrish, good morning from West Tennessee, and good morning to you too. And I got the what's the game that's on here? Oh, it's the Pittsburgh Jaguars game here going on. What am I watching? Yeah, the Pittsburgh Jaguars. The Titans played last night. You guys lost, sadly. Glenn Thompson, Abedin Durakovic, Rob Bass, Chris Follett, Kevin Francis, Tyree Revival. Okay, good. The usual crowd is gathering. We don't have a whole lot happening in terms of major activity going forward. We do have a weak system that's going to be moving across the Great Lakes, parts of the Ohio Valley, and then into the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states. And one of the reasons, if we go back to a couple of days ago, where the European model was particularly guilty of this, trying to make a more important storm along the East Coast, in reality, that is not going to be the case because of how the upper air sets up, which is not really all that favorable for a system to move up the coast, but rather to be kicked out to the east. So we'll start with the GFS model, the new GFS that's out right now, and we'll run you through what's happening. So first we'll start with the surface, and the weather actually across the U.S. isn't particularly eventful today. So in fact, we'll bring up the whole U.S. map. And you can see the system that's moving into Minnesota with some snow there and some snows back up into parts of eastern Montana and on up through Canada where the Arctic frontal boundary is set up. You've got a pretty strong high in upstate New York. We're very cold here today. We're in the teens and 20s and not going much higher. I got the fireplace going. So this disturbance is dropping southeastward. Now, as it continues to move to the southeast, we also have the remnants of the old front offshore, and you get some development there way out to the east of 70 that's not going to be of consequence. But it does leave room for a bit of an inverted trough behind along the east coast. So as that energy comes to the east, you start to get this band of snow that develops here on Tuesday into Tuesday night. This could be a few inches for somebody, certainly. A weak little low forms out of this. Also showing some snows in eastern Virginia and North Carolina. The NAB's a bit more bullish with this overall. And then it moves out to the east. Now, there'll be another shot of cold air behind it, but that'll be the last one for a little while anyway. System coming into the northwest as we move into Thursday, and then it comes inland. But gradually in the east, we're going to see a bit of a warm-up next weekend as the high goes out offshore. And I'll show you the upper air and why it plays out this way. And then we've got cold air up in Canada, but that kind of spreads eastward rather than move southward. So you'll get a low that'll probably come out next weekend into the southern plains with some snows for Colorado and Kansas and Nebraska. And then eventually that low is going to wind up going up to the Great Lakes and on up into Canada from there. That might be the first cutter storm that we're going to see here in this pattern shift, let's call it, that's going to be going on. And then after that, once that goes by, there'll be a shot of cold air behind that in the east, but again, short-lived as the ridge is going to want to try to build in the east, and the general trough is, at least for the time being, going to shift out into the west. And when we bring up the North America view, I'll put the upper air on and we'll show you why this is not going to be a huge deal here with regards to snow. And let's bring up the upper air. Okay, so here's the trough. Actually, when you look at this upper air, it does look potentially problematic. You have a very, very strong ridge up in the west. This is that Pacific North America index being off the wall positive today, but it is going to crash negative in about 3 days. There's going to be a big change there in Northwest Canada. And the reason is you've got this deep trough that is moving into the Pacific Northwest. This is one of the reasons why the European was wrong in its view back a few days ago, because it didn't crash the ridge as quickly as it is going to be crashed. And as a result, you've got this system that wants to initially dig southeastward and, again, potentially be problematic. But the problem is, with that ridge going away, you can see the trough kind of gets stretched out in a northeast-southwest fashion. You also have the Atlantic ridge weakening, so that's creating some flow in the upper atmosphere across eastern Canada. So all of these two factors, the crashing ridge in the west and troughing in eastern Canada, is basically suppressing this system here in the eastern part of the United States. And then once that goes, the heights are going to start coming up as we move into next weekend, and the trough goes out into the west. It's not anything off the wall here. I think it'll probably mean a couple of days where we could see temperatures in the 40s and 50s, which actually, if it happens, it'll happen without rain initially, so that's good. We'll have a warm-up that we might be able to actually stretch our legs and enjoy a little bit. And as we move into the longer term, going into the last week of January, or toward the last 7 or 8 days of January, the trough is going to be in the west, and you get a big ridge to pop up in the eastern states. Now, beyond that, I don't know. I mean, it looks like, at least on today's run, late in the long range, that the chess pieces may be moving around again, and that is something we'll pay attention to. I repeatedly have said this, and I'll say it again. I think that we'll probably see a pattern reload in February when we get there. It may not be exactly the same way, but I think it's possible that we will get. I think it's probable that we're going to get some sort of a pattern reload, but it'll just look maybe slightly different than what we experienced. But in the meantime, I want to take a look at what's going on across Western Europe, because you've got a very, very deep upper air trough and upper air low that's going to be exerting its influence all across Western Europe. That is very cold air that's coming in off of Greenland and into the continent. And of course, this is going to impact the weather across the UK and in Ireland. I think you're going to see some snow over the next 3 days with this kind of upper airflow coming down from the northwest. Now, after next week, it does relax. You do get a ridge that builds back in, but you got about 5 or 6 days of this to deal with. And in the meantime, why don't we take a look at what it means from the standpoint of actual day-to-day weather. But we do have rain that's coming in for the overnight. And then right behind that weather front is cold air. And you can see much of England and Ireland into snow by the time we get to Monday night and Tuesday, and even into Tuesday night. We've got another low that's out in the Atlantic that's going to move across northern Scotland and then into the North Sea and over into Norway and Sweden, and that has a shot of cold air behind it. So looks like to me you're going to get a fair amount of snow in some places. If we take a look at the total snowfall map, again, this is going to be elevation driven, but you could see some really hefty amounts being indicated for parts of this is in centimeters, by the way, in parts of Scotland, the west-facing shores of Scotland showing 40 to 50 centimeters of snow being indicated here. I mean, that's every bit of a 1.5 to 2.5 feet of snow possible across much of western Scotland, and even down as you move down south into England itself, on the western shores of England and Wales, and in Northern Ireland, and even the west shores of Southern Ireland, getting into some rather interesting amounts of snow, under 20 centimeter amounts. That's rather cool for you snow lovers there. So you've got some winter weather ahead of you this week. And with respect to what's going on for Eastern Canada, southeastern Canada in particular, here's your snowfall through next weekend. I'll just bring it out a little further. Amounts, nothing crazy. Actually, amounts all look to be on the light side, with the exception of Newfoundland, which seems to do well, and also Nova Scotia, with some amounts up to 20 to 30 centimeters. And when we'll put the surface map here so you can at least see how this plays out. So, with this little wave that's going to develop off the East Coast, let me run this by, and there you go. So here's the first one. So this is for Monday night and Tuesday, with mostly snow, except a little bit of ice along the immediate coast with that low. Nothing exceptionally deep, but then that moves out, and then we've got another shot for snow as we move toward the end of the week. Again, not an exceptionally intense system until it gets well to the northeast of Labrador and starts its march over toward Greenland. So it's a pretty wintry pattern there going into this week. Going to be very interesting to see where the pattern ultimately goes in the long range. But for now, I'm thinking that, we're going to get into this break. It's only natural. You cannot, this pattern has been, it's relaxed from the extreme, but still delivering cold air. Oh, I should also, by the way, let me just show you what the snowfall is for us, for the U.S. Let me bring that back up. And let's, here we go. So let me just push up the snow map totals. And this is through, we'll just go 1 week into this. So through next Sunday anyway. All of what falls in the east is going to be through the middle of this week, with this low as it exits, and same for areas across the Ohio Valley. You can see amounts are generally on the light side, up to a couple of inches in spots. It might be a little bit more in parts of New England. The west does very well here, with some fairly hefty amounts of snow in the Rockies, and extending on up into the northwest, and even some areas not too far from the coastal northwest get into some snow, some 4 or 5 inch amounts across the northern lakes, and on up in through parts of upstate New York, and then you head up into the St. Lawrence Valley. But it appears at least that there are no major storms on the horizon for the next week or so, except for whatever weather system comes in late this week out in the western part of the United States. But at least for my neck of the woods, you certainly could see maybe a few inches in some places come later Tuesday or Tuesday night with this system that's going to be moving through in the east. But it's not going to be a big deal, and it's not going to evolve into a major storm of any kind. You just don't have the support in the upper atmosphere for anything major. So let me say hi to everybody. Delvin, I did want to do the live stream today, and early, because this way I can watch a little football. Yeah, I try to use some of this downtime when the weather's quiet. It takes a lot of energy out of me to do all this, between the website and Facebook and YouTube and everything else. And I enjoy doing it, but sometimes your brain gets fried and you got to take a step back. And that's kind of where I am right now today. Let's see. Gun candy. Eating lunch. Kids are fixing to go outside in there side by side and do donuts in the snow. That's awesome. Have fun with your kids in the snow. Snow, nothing to me is more serene heaven-like as the end of a snowfall, where you start to see the flakes just kind of peter out, but there's this just general quiet. That noise you might be hearing right now, my fireplace just kicked on, the fans for the fireplace to heat up the house. 72-minute live streams are the best, Delvin. I don't know if I had the energy in me today or the amount of weather to talk about to go for 73 minutes. So I don't think we're going to be doing that today. What are my YouTube goals, Albedin Durakovic? I'm not sure yet. I've got a few things in my head that I would like to do. I would like to do more live streams with guest forecasters, perhaps. But the logistics are a bit problematic. So, but I'm going to try from time to time to see if I can do that. It helps to give a different perspective sometimes to the weather and to the overall weather pattern. So I think I'm going to give that a try, and then maybe down the road might want to maybe get this all into a bit more of a studio format. That's something I'm going to be looking into as well. David Frost wrote it, the best effects of the snow in the woods in particular. Yes, agreed. David Frost or Robert Frost, Franklin? Robert Frost I know. David Frost I'm not familiar with. What happened to the tutorial weather videos? Well, Delvin, I don't have time. That's another thing I wanted to do. I wanted to maybe get into that and do some tutorial weather videos to help everybody coming along. Glenn Thompson, library events. Yes, I do. I have my next one is on Saturday, January 27th on Long Island in Lindenhurst at 2 p.m. And I have one in February. I believe it's February 20. I want to say February 22nd. I'll have to go back and look it up, but that's going to be in Floral Park in Queens on a it's either a Tuesday or a Wednesday evening, but I'll get the date, the correct date and time for you. But the Lindenhurst is the next one, and I have a few more booked up along the way. Weather and low. How much snow could you get in Norfolk this Wednesday? Well, you might wind up with a couple of inches when the upper trough swings eastward. Some models don't give very much. The NAM is the one that's more aggressive. It gives a coating to a couple of inches. And that should be that for a while for you in the snow capital of the Mid-Atlantic states. I am feeling better, Brandon. Thank you very much for asking. Let's see. Okay, you keep missing them, Glenn. Yeah, check my Facebook page when I put up the event schedule too. But you'll hook up to one of these days. I've got a bunch of them booked up for April, May, and June, and through the summer. So somewhere along the way, our schedules will sync up. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions. Patricia Pachulak, hello back in NEPA, which I have to make a trip out to NEPA and see some friends, especially once the weather warms up so I can go fishing on the Susquehanna River. Just trying to check out, make sure I got all your questions touched on today. And Jason wants to know, how much trouble would a westward connection of that low cause? Well, Jason, might be more that inverted trough that I would pay attention to, the way it sets up along the coast, because sometimes that can surprise coastal areas. So I want to be a little bit careful about that. Raymond says Albany got to a record high of 63 on Friday and to 0 this morning. Which reminds me, by the way, one of the things that happened here, because of the wind coming in from the south off the ocean water temperatures are down near or 40 or so, or even under 40. But the bays were all frozen. And even though the temperatures on land got to low 60s, I'm about 9 miles north of the South Shore. And the bays being frozen kept temperatures right along the immediate South Shore in the 40s throughout all of this event over the last couple of days. And the bays, both in New Jersey and on Long Island, did not melt at all during this 48 hours of very warm air. So now that the cold air is back, they've just gotten, they're back into their icy Arctic picture that they have with the ice being relatively thick. But Be sure if you are, using local ponds, the freshwater ponds, a lot of them, the ice at least cracked and melted somewhat and then refroze last night. So you might want to give it, make sure the ice is thick enough just to be sure. The roads all dried up before those temps plummeted. Yeah, I agree, David. The rain actually shut off a few hours earlier than models were showing. That was a good thing. Rob Bass, your local news is saying it will snow here in Pensacola. Okay, let me see. I didn't think it was going to get that far south, to tell you the truth, but let me just give it a look. No, I can't. Where's this going to come from? No, not. I don't know where they're getting that from, because that's not happening, at least from what I can see. Let me just go back. I'm trying to see where they get this. Okay, I see what they're looking at. There is something that's swinging. The bottom part of that trough on Tuesday swings down across Texas, but I don't see how you're going to get snow out of that. You are going to be cold, but I'm thinking, it doesn't look to me, but I don't know if there's some sort of weird thing going on with respect to climate. Oh, there's one little dot of precip. Yeah, no, that's not happening. Sorry, not this time around. You folks down south have had more than your fair share of snow this winter. I want Boston to go from 100 to a blizzard. Well, okay, in 22 minutes. Oh, come on, Delvin. That's a Twilight Zone episode. So that ain't gonna happen. Tint roll up. Northeast Pennsylvania is gorgeous. You're on Lake Wallenpaupack. Oh yeah, I love it up there. It's beautiful. I haven't been up there in the last couple of years, so I think that's going to be on my to-do list this spring and summer, is to take a ride up to NEPA. That is a beautiful part of Pennsylvania if you've never been. But we don't want the secret to get out, otherwise then it gets too crowded. And it's very peaceful, and we kind of like it that way. All right, folks, let's leave it here. Football's starting up, so let's get to your football games. Website posts on meteorologistjoecioffi.com. Thank you for those of you who are new to the channel today. Welcome. Do subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's absolutely free. We do live streams at least once a day. William, how much snow for Southern Ohio Monday and Tuesday? I'll sneak in a quick last question. Hang on. I think, let me see how far the southern end of that is going to go. Let me pull up the snow map on the GFS. The models are giving a coating to an inch or two. This is a pretty weak system, so I don't think you're going to get too much out of this. Everybody's throwing questions at the last minute. Fernando Garcia, do I think it will snow in northeastern Mexico again? CMC seem to agree. With the trough going into the west, I think so, especially as we get into later next week and beyond. I think you're going to have your chances. Okay, and Delvin, live stream schedule. Thanks for reminding me. Okay, so we're back to kind of normal this week. So barring any sort of last-minute things that happen, that occur, we're talking the usual 6 p.m. Eastern Time live stream. Unless you'd rather me push it back to 7 p.m. Let me know if 7 works better for most of you or 6. But right now I'm going to stick with 6 o'clock. Okay. All right, folks. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you on board tomorrow.